Welcome to Popcorn Chat. I'm Kurt Jarvis. This week, the three movies I will be reviewing for you are A Dangerous Method, Shame, and Red Tails. Let's start with A Dangerous Method, directed by David Cronenberg. It's starring Michael Fassbender, Viggo Mortensen, and Keira Knightley. This is a movie about Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. Freud is played by Viggo Mortensen and Jung by Michael Fassbender. As some of you may or may not know, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung were the two psychologists in history who sort of introduced psychoanalysis into the mainstream consciousness of the world. What a lot of people don't know is that there was a girl that came between them named Sabina, who was played by Keira Knightley. Now, while I find the story to be fantastic, I find the movie to be solid. It's good, it's just not great. One of my problems with this movie is that David Cronenberg, who has done some really good work in the past with A History of Violence and Eastern Promises, he didn't have the edginess to this that he brought to those other two films. In fact, this was more conversational than any of his other movies, and I don't know if that's just a style change he used because that's the way he wants to go in his career, or if he just felt that was the best way to go in this movie. Because there are some pretty, wicked sex scenes between Keira Knightley and Michael Fassbender, which are kind of risque for the time period. So maybe that's what he was trying to introduce as the edge. Still, it's a solid effort. The only thing that really annoyed me on the acting end was Keira Knightley choosing when this scene or that scene to use her Russian accent and then forgetting about it in other scenes, and nobody really seemed to care. But Michael Fassbender and Viggo Mortensen both did a solid job as normal. They're both very good actors. It's worth your time. The next movie is Red Tails. This is a historic biopic, if you will, of the Tuskegee Airmen, which was considered in the World War II phase as the Black Air Force. This movie doesn't really have a main star. It co-stars Cuba Gooding Jr. and Terrence Howard, who, by the way, both are heavyweight actors. They just know how to do this, okay? They're great in this movie. They're going to be great in just pretty much any movie that they're in. The interesting part was that it was directed by Anthony Hemingway. His last movie that he directed was in 1995 called Empire Records, which I liked. I thought that was a good movie. Ironically, Empire Records and Red Tails both have something in common. Critics hated both of them, and audiences loved both of them. So maybe Anthony Hemingway was trying to look for something more, critical praise, and so he decided to do this one. But he's not getting a lot of love on that end either. I will say this about the acting. The one actor that really stood out for me is Nate Parker. Nate Parker is a really good up-and-coming young actor. I first noticed him in The Great Debaters when he played Henry Lowe with across from Denzel Washington, and he held his own very well in that movie. And I'm waiting very patiently, actually I should say impatiently, for Red Hook Summer to come out, which was directed by Spike Lee and also has Nate Parker in it. I'm a big fan of Nate Parker. He did a good job as the character Easy. He's sort of the squadron leader. He did good. The main problem with this movie is the storytelling. It's very inconsistent. It doesn't know what it wants to be, and it was produced by George Lucas, who, if you know anything about cinema, he did the Star Wars films. And he invented, created, and shot the Star Wars films. And at times, Red Tails had a Star Wars feel to it, not only from a dogfighting plane perspective, but from a dialogue perspective. The problem is it really didn't know what it wanted to be. It didn't know whether or not it wanted to be a serious look at the World War II Tuskegee Airmen, or if it wanted to kind of cater towards kids. I mean, there are times when the dialogue just seemed kind of childish. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. The main Nazi guy, who comes back 3 or 4 times in this movie, kind of literally says, "I will get you, you foolish African." Ooh, hard-hitting dialogue. I mean, it was like, what? I mean, I almost saw him like Darth Vader-ish. Hey, I'm going to get you, Luke. I mean, it just didn't, it didn't make sense. And then they would go ahead and throw in a cuss word just as a zinger, and you're like, this just doesn't fit. So I didn't know what they were going for, and it really just kind of knocks the balance off of the film. I didn't know whether to sit back and enjoy this. I didn't know if this is going to be a serious thing. And then they explained everything. Almost every thought by every character had to be explained, like, I like music. Really? I mean, and then at the end, when one of the characters I think has died comes back, they don't explain how he got there at all. So after all of this whole movie of explaining everything, they don't explain that. Go figure. I don't know. It seems to be doing very well at the box office. People seem to like it. The dogfighting scenes are absolutely excellent. Those are brilliantly shot, and they're done in a way where you're not losing yourself as an audience member. it holds its own. To me, you know, that was worth the film for me, but I still didn't like it overall. The last movie I want to talk about is Shame, starring Michael Fassbender again. This movie is rated NC-17, so a lot of you may not know about it. It's usually in a lot of independent art house films. And what this is it's about a character named Brandon who has a sex addiction. And I'm talking a severe sex addiction. He has sex with other people, with himself, with guys, with girls. He doesn't care. He has to keep the sex addiction fueled. And it's to the point where they actually take his computer away at work because it has a virus, and he downloaded so much porn on it that they're questioning his ethics at work, and he's really good at his job. Well, Carey Mulligan plays his sister, who comes in and basically needs a place to stay, upending not only his bachelor life, but his severe sex life. And it starts putting his life in perspective for himself, and he starts feeling shameful about what he's doing, and starts questioning himself, and to the point where he literally throws away all of his pornographic magazines, he throws away his computer, and he wants to start living a normal life. What is really great about this film is director Steve McQueen, his vision for it is wonderful. It's methodically paced, and it's done deliberately, and it's done that on purpose for a reason. It's not slow, it's not fast, it's right in the middle. And the reason for that is so you can see the wheels turning in Brandon's head, and you can start feeling what he is feeling. And to give you an idea of the contrast that Steve McQueen used, when Michael Fassbender is in his usual sexual mode with a hooker or somebody he just picked up, his face is almost painful. It's like he is in pain going through this, but his body is telling him he needs to go through this. And it's not really sexy at all. The scene is not sexy. And in contrast to that is he starts dating a coworker who really likes him. And when they go to have sex for the first time, there's a moment where she reaches up and touches his face, like, in a very caring way, and he can no longer have sex at that point. He has to stop because he doesn't know what that is. He doesn't know what caring is. He doesn't know what feelings are. And it is a very powerful moment in the film. Powerful is a very good way to describe this film. Very, very powerful. It is brilliant. It is amazing. Michael Fassbender didn't even get nominated for an Oscar for this, and that is a travesty. That is the best acting performance that I have seen all year. I felt sorry for this guy. He strips down both physically and mentally in this film. I cannot believe that it's not getting more love from a lot of audiences. And lastly, I'll say I have no idea why it's rated NC-17. Yes, it's about sex addiction. There's been many movies about sex addiction. There's been many scenes that have sex in them. I've never seen anything in an R-rated film. I've seen worse things in an R-rated film than I saw in this one. I don't know. I don't understand the rating system. I think that it's flawed from day one. But go see Shame. It is probably going to make my top 5 of films of last year. If you come back next week, the 3 movies that I will be reviewing are The Gray, Man on a Ledge, and One for the Money. And for you DVD renters out there, this week, go rent Drive, starring Ryan Gosling. It is a brilliant film. It'll stay with you a couple of days, and Ryan Gosling's performance is fantastic. That's all I have for this week. Until next week, I might see you at the movies.